Everyone, and welcome to a very special live edition of the Ski the Kingdom show. This is episode 10 and I'm joined by three very special guests today, so thank you very much guys for being here. We'll kick it off if you guys just want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what we're up to in the snowsports industry. So,
hi, Ian Findlay, freelance commentator covering a whole variety of winter sports, and here to just have a little look ahead to the really exciting season that we've got coming up.
Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm working as a coach in Canada with some development athletes through their fundamentals program, as it's now called, and I do some judging with Gareth as well.
So I'm Gaz. I'm a semi-professional snowboard judge, I guess. Working a lot on the British scene and trying to move up and do a lot more bigger contests, I guess, moving forwards, and still coach with some of the younger kids as well. So, yeah.
Really exciting, and it's a really exciting time of year. The season feels like it's not too far away, just around the corner. We're here at the London Ski Show, about to kick off. And Ian, you've got some news because the season's just about to start in the next few weeks, and you've had a bit of development. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, well, the season obviously kicked off in Southern Hemisphere in New Zealand. There was some events down there, but they were good for the athletes. They don't really generate much publicity though. But we were supposed to have the freestyle and snowboard season kick off in Copenhagen a week tomorrow, Friday the 3rd of November. It's just been cancelled this week though, and it's due to poor ticket sales, which is ahead of this season, particularly with snowboard big air being an Olympic event for the very first time. I think it's a really negative way to start the season, and it's a real shame because these city centre events have a lot of potential. They take the sport of freestyle ski or big air skiing and snowboarding right to the heart of the population. And obviously last year we had a number of them. We did Milan kicked it off, which was fantastic. There was Mönchengladbach, which was really well attended, and then Quebec City, right in the heart of Quebec City. So to start the season off with a cancellation, I think is a shame. And to be honest, I think a few questions have got to be asked at the last minute, a week before the event, where things have been cancelled.
What would you put it down to? Is there a reason behind it, or what's?
I don't think there's a huge number of towns, cities really crying out or calling out to host these events. If we look back just a couple of years, that we were supposed to have one in London, and it was actually cancelled for the same reason. So I'm wondering, potential our organisers jumping on it, thinking it's going to be a really good thing, but maybe the public aren't quite seeing it the same way. Now, the organisers have always tried to add music and things to it, but primarily it is a ski and snowboard competition, and is that enough of a draw to bring in people to these events? I don't know, and it was a real shame because I think they could be fantastic events, and to start the season off with a cancellation I don't think it's good for the sport.
We've got behind us now, there's Mount Battersea, a mini kind of big out there, and you guys are judging it this weekend. Do you think, does it bring the excitement? Is it kind of a reason for people to come out and watch skiers and snowboards in the city?
Yeah, I think definitely it's a really easy access to the sport. You don't have to go up the mountains. It's there, right, and it's in your local city. So it's a sort of event that, if done well, I think it could be really easy to bring that sport to the masses and make it much more, accessible rather than it being an elite sport, as it were. And because it's just one hit for a lot of them, it's really easy for the crowd to understand what the points are all going to, rather than having to think of how it's split between the rails, the kickers, etc., or even looking at halfpipe. It's just, you can kind of tell the crowd the biggest, best trick wins, and it's a very easy concept to get across.
Absolutely, and I think it's really important that these events draw crowds, like Ian said, and with ticket sales. And unfortunately, Scandinavia does have this kind of, what's it called? What am I thinking
of? It's expensive place.
Expensive, absolutely.
It's expensive for everyone.
Yeah, I think people are going to be put off travelling to Scandinavia to attend an event like that. Unlike Milan and Italy and Quebec City, even because you've got all the Canadians that travel. You've got a huge population of Canada anyway that can travel to Quebec. So I think that's going to have a big impact on it. So I think it's a bit of a risky place to hold one of the events, especially the first one of the year.
I think if you look at here at the ski show, it's the show itself that's bringing a lot of the people in. They're coming to book holidays, think about where they're going, see the latest gear, and that's fantastic. And the ramp that we've got behind is brilliant. I love watching it. It's great for the athletes that are here, but would that alone be enough to bring people in? Now, it's a great jump, but it's not a World Cup Big Air size. So in order to, and I think if you're taking these events to not traditional ski towns, ski or snowboard towns, like Copenhagen. It's not a snow sports town. Sure, there's people with passion for the sport there, like there is in London. But you need to have a big draw to pull other people in. And that's why Milan worked. Milan is a ski town. It had over 15,000 people in there. It's so close to the mountains. I was surprised Mönchengladbach worked, but I think they had because it's not a snow sports town as well. But they did a really good job in promoting that event. And as Chris said, Quebec City, well, that's a snow sports mecca, and they actually had a slope style event in I think World Cup just before or just after in where was it again? Not La Massive, it was I forget the big one. Stone and Mont Saint Anne, I believe they had it. So they were able to capitalize and use the fact the athletes are here. Now, maybe if you've got an event like the ski show, you'd have to build the jump. What? 20, 30 meters higher here, and the cost goes up. But if you did something like that, I know we're speculating, if you've got the draw of the crowd at the ski show and you can put a World Cup on or along the side of that, maybe that would work in London. I don't know. I think the concept of these events is good. We've got to get snow sports in, and FIS, should be commended for trying to host it in Copenhagen. It was looking good. However, somewhere down the line, something's gone wrong, and I think
you're absolutely right in terms of they should have known more than a week before. I think that's probably a really hard-hitting thing. Should have all these athletes that were super excited. You're kind of like Ian said, going into the Olympic year, Big Air being the first event, they get a nice early World Cup, and then for it to be called off a week before, I think it's going to take that excitement away a little bit from the Olympics. And it's really important now that FIS and kind of the World Snowboard Federation work hard to make the next event really successful, to bring that draw back before South Korea.
Talk us through a bit what's coming up this season in terms of sort of city big airs leading into this World Cup year.
Yeah, well, the FIS, as we said, they had the Super Series last season, which was 3 events, and it was a mini tour within the overall Snowboard Big Air Tour. And ski as well. And there was good prize money. It brought in some top athletes, and it worked quite well. Interestingly, the snowboard tour is heading to Beijing for another big air event. Now, Beijing, they've got the money, they've got the Olympics in 2022. So I'm pretty confident that will go ahead. Whether it will be well attended, I don't know. I think it will be, actually, to be fair. But I'm looking at the travel then for the athletes. They've had one event cancelled. Now we're off to Beijing. Last year, before we went from Milan, the snowboarders went to Korea for a test event for the Olympics, which was very poorly attended, if you ask me. And then they came back from Mönchengladbach. So snowboarders have got their work cut out. And for me, that then raises a question: is will everyone be going? Will the athletes still be trying to generate quota places, ranking points to qualify for the big air? And if anything, it might dilute some of the fields at some of the events. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, and I think as you say, with the tour spreading everything out, it's important to have that top field of riders everywhere. Otherwise, the sport just loses that momentum. If you have the top riders there, then you're pushing the tricks forward, and that momentum goes all the way up to the Olympics. If you've only got like the second tier riders that can travel all the way across, then the standard's not going to be up there, and it's not going to have that same pull through.
There was an example of that last season from the World Cup Tour. There was a freestyle ski Big Air World Cup in Myrkdal and Voss right at the end of March, and it was Europa Cup riders that were there, 1 or 2 top riders there, but the field was pretty diluted. We covered it on Eurosport Asia Pacific. It was a nice event. It's a nice place to go. It held the World Champs in 2013, but to see it felt almost tacked on at the end of the year. The World Championships had been. Riders are winding down. It's an Olympic season coming up, so you could see why a few athletes didn't go. So I know the guys and girls at FIS are working really hard to coordinate the calendar, but if you're going to hold World Cup events, you've got to make sure you try your utmost to get the strongest athletes at every single event.
Yeah, it's so important that tour doesn't lose its credibility by it's not fair to say have the weaker riders come through, but I think it's important to ensure that a World Cup is the World Cup. You've got NORAMs, you've got Europa Cups for the next level, you've got FIS for the level down under that, and it's important that those categories stay true to what they are, and that's a really...
And I think with big air, now as an Olympic discipline for snowboard, I'd be very surprised if by 2022 ski big air is not an Olympic discipline. And the question for me, when you're looking at the developing athletes, which is obviously your passion and yours as well, Gareth, and my own, is where do these athletes then become big air specialists? Because the type of kickers that you're getting in big air World Cups are quite different to what you find in the terrain parks. So if it goes all city centre events, then where do you host a Europa Cup? Where do you host FIS? And what we've got here with this event at the ski show is an opportunity for young athletes to be in a sort of smaller scale environment, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But where do those young athletes then experience big air? My worry is you could see a bit of a gap from World Cup and of course X Games, which has hosted big air events for a while, and that gap could get bigger. So I think we, as the sport, have got to ensure there's a clear route to develop the big air side, because if it's just city centre events and they're expensive to put on, they're person-made ramps with snow having to be brought in most of the time. It's not cheap.
Sort of to add on to that, I think it's also not putting riders off from wanting to do big air. If they're only in the city and they're looking at it and they're going, it's inaccessible, they're going to go, do you know what, I'm going to go and do slope style, or I'm going to go and do half pipe, because they go, well, no, where am I even going to train for that? I think that's something that they need to ensure they follow up by, I think, to add on what Ian's saying, create pathways into that field as well.
But I think it's interesting. We're seeing in the Alpine world city centre events. There's been in Munich, Stockholm in Sweden, which was a really good event. I think when that ran, David Briding was fourth in that event, if I remember. I think it was just after his Kitzbühel podium, or just a couple of weeks after. And so you're seeing Alpine do the same, which is good. They run in a dual slalom format. It's trying to take it to a new market is a really strong thing for the overall snow sports scene. Moscow held a parallel snowboard World Cup, which was good. They love it over there. But how creative could we be? Could we have, if you look at the mountain bike world, there was a city centre downhill that used to be held in Lisbon. Could we have some sort of city centre downhill? Let's park the health and safety aspect of that. But how creative could we be? Now, I think you could have mini slopestyle events. Would it be a World Cup? I don't know how you'd go about creating it. But the opportunity to bring other disciplines to the city centre is important. But you've got to have things around it to get kids interested and youngsters and people developing that passion for snow sports, and then take it back to its natural environment in the mountains.
Red Bull used to hold the urban event. I don't know if you remember the urban slopestyle. It was so popular, created really good crowds because it was in smaller city centres as well. I think it just gave that big buzz to people that don't necessarily can't make it to the mountains. And I think that's what's important, going back to the big air events in the city, is it's drawing crowds in that wouldn't normally see that type of thing. Even if you go on your skiing holiday, you may not necessarily stand and watch the terrain park, but that creates a whole new audience for the sport, and I think that's really key.
Gaz, can I just ask you how you think the judging will go down in the Olympics? Because I know that you've been on judging courses with the World Snowboard Federation, is that right? And we've worked together on slopestyle for Eurosport and halfpipe, and we've seen quite a specific type of judging at the FIS events and at Sochi 2014, which was maybe different to the past, where you were rewarded for putting the effort of the trick. Now you can't make a mistake. Do you think in the big air the judging is going to be really, really hard? Not harsh is the wrong word, but very critical at the Olympics.
I think it's going to have to be. I think nowadays we've looked at big air the past few years, and everyone's got those backside triples on lock. Even I think it was air and style last year. The finalist was 6 backside 14 point mutes. So now the judges are literally splitting hairs to kind of pull out the hand drags, the tiniest instabilities are going to be heavily penalised, I think. But with it being the first year that the big air's there, they're going to be pretty under the spotlight with the judging. And I know FIS don't want it to become a specialist discipline, so that's why they've made the criteria you have to enter both slopestyle and big air for the Olympics, just to keep it from being gymnastic-y too much. That's something the judges are going to be pretty hot on, is looking at the tricks and whether they're snowboarding tricks or whether they're gymnastic tricks done on a snowboard. It's something they've shown in the way they've been judging the past World Cups, is penalising the really flippy stuff that's not a snowboard trick as such. So it's something they're going to be really hot on. It'll be interesting to see how the riders have been looking at that over the past few years, and whether they take that into account with the tricks they choose to go with.
So it's interesting with the that Air and Style event. Was it Los Angeles Air and Style? Again, another city centre event, Air and Style, separate from FIS, separate from X Games. Maybe we got to look at some partnership work. We got to get everyone round the table and go, how can we sort this? Because some of these events are working. What everyone did there was it backside front triple cork 1440 mute. The riders have got to look at themselves, because they know, and as a judge, if at the Olympics everyone throws, if the weather allows it, I don't think a 1440 is going to win. I think it's going to be bigger than that. But if the weather comes in a little bit, we might see that. For the viewing public, and when we're on commentary for that, how do we explain that to them? Everyone's done the same trick. So to then, and the viewer's going to go, what was that? Everyone's done the same thing here. So it's on the athletes as well, and the coaches, for me, to look at how they can be creative in those events. And that's where the Olympics. Is the Olympics a place to be creative? Well, you know, you get a rider in ski. I know there's no ski big air, but Henrik Harlow, you know, like he did in Sochi, he's going to be creative. Wasn't rewarded for it. If you get on the women's side, like Anna Gasser, she's consistently throwing that cab underflip, cab double underflip, isn't it?
Soon to be triple, I reckon.
So, yeah, we reckon. And if she does that at the Olympics, she's going to win, I think.
I think so, yeah, just because it'll be progressing that women's sport that far up a notch.
Katie Ormerod's the next rider. It's between those two, if they're both fit and healthy. Touch wood, they are. And I think the women's event could be in many ways more interesting, because there is that potential for Anna Gasser to do that triple. And if she does that, that's the story. Whereas the men sometimes can be a little bit more gymnastic-y and play the tactics game sometimes.
Yeah, but I think the way the format I think is supposed to work is it's a three-run format, best two-run counts, and there have to be different tricks for those two runs. So it's almost now those people doing the 1440 backside triple corks, that almost just levels the playing field, and it all comes into that second run and who can spin the frontside cab switchback to get that other directional spinning.
Are you a fan of that best 2 of 3 to count? Because on the World Cup in the Super Series last season, one run, best of 3, and that allows the riders to be a bit creative on every run. And if it's best 2 or 3, you get those safety runs. And for me, those riders start playing it safe a little bit on one run, and then it all really comes down to second or third run. So I mean, for me, I'd like to just see a straight shootout, 2 runs, or best jump to count. Because if it's best 2, you could have 2 safety runs and win, rather than someone that tries to do something new, something creative, fails 3 times. Okay, yes, you've got to land your trick, but two safety runs could walk away with a medal. And then that's the old snowboarding question: do you value the Olympic medal or the win ahead of progressing the sport?
So I quite like it just because it gives that double side of it. So you can't just be relying on one trick. You can't go out and just hit the backside triple cork every week and perfect it. You've got to have the extra bag of tricks to be able to go. Actually, I need to go frontside triple, which is way harder because it's that last cork comes around completely blind. So I like the variety from it, and I think as the level of the riding increases and the riders need to differentiate themselves even more, it'll help, because they'll have to start going backside 16 on the first hit and then switch backside 12 maybe on the second hit.
And that would make it really interesting. I think for me, you need consistency. World Cup and Olympics. World Cup, Olympics, World Champs, you have whether it's best 2 or 3 or best of 3, if the viewer's getting into the sport, to then get to the Olympics and have a slightly different format, I don't think that's a good thing
I
either.
think because they both come under the same governing body, I think that's where there should be consistency. I think it's a little bit different if it's being run by the World Snowboard Federation, because they are a different entity, so they can change the format, and you can explain that easily to someone. If you're trying to explain to someone that the national governing body for this is FIS, but then it's different World Cup and Olympics, which are the qualifiers for the Olympics, it becomes a little bit more complicated and blurs the idea a little bit.
Talk us through, obviously you've got a very big exciting year, kind of what are the events kind of leading up to Pyeongchang which we look out for?
Yeah, we'll start with the snowboards and freestyle tour, and then probably have a look at the ski cross, because I know on your Ski the Kingdom podcast you had a look at Alpine. I mean, we could talk all day here, but we're going into Stubai Glacier event, I think at the end of November. I'm really interested to see what the field is like for that. I think a few guys and girls have already got the points to go, so there'll be a lot of athletes trying to get in, but I don't know what you guys think about a glacier slope style event in November.
I think they've kind of had to do it. I think because where the Olympics falls this year, to get enough events into, because like you said, there's quite a few people have already got the points and have qualified, but there's those remaining slots now that they need to fill, and the only way they can get enough events in is to pull one earlier in the season. I think as long as the snow holds up, the glacier looks amazing at the moment. I don't know if you've seen the park.
Great, yeah.
They've done a really
Stubai
good
Zoo
job.
is one of the best places, isn't it?
But I think it'll be interesting, like you said, to see who actually turns up. It's going to be a battle, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's
And snowboard, you say?
Yeah, I think it's going to be. It should run fine. Like Stubai is a known stomping ground, so at least it's not somewhere brand new that they're just testing out. It's a proven place. I think it should be really interesting for the snowboarders, just because with it being the Olympic year, last time when the Olympics came around, it was all creativity in the double grabs, and some of the riders have been showing that a little bit more now. So they've been actually changing the grabs up rather than just focusing on the spins. So we'll see how that lines up in the run up to it.
The thing for me, I'm coming at it from a broadcasting point of view here. Having covered ski cross since 2010, a lot of those events were done because of snow conditions more than anything, quite far up the mountains. You've got small crowds. It comes across to the viewer. If there's a small crowd there, is this that important? Now, if we're hosting an event, and I understand all the reasons why they're doing that on a glacier, and I get that, I would do the same. But realistically, how many people are going to be up watching that event? Is that going to look like it means something? That's where the city centre events can have that impact. Well, this is a big deal. Now, a glacier event in Stubai is realistically not going to have the biggest crowd. There's only so many people you can get up that mountain. And if it's a little bit windy or snowing, we've seen it on the FIS tour, on slopestyle and halfpipe. Pretty small crowds, and from a broadcasting point of view, that often doesn't look so good on television. So do you reckon that will impact on it? Or?
I don't think it'll impact it too much, because I think it's the problem with slopestyle, it's because it's such a long course. Because even if you look at the Lax Open, which is arguably one of the biggest events on the calendar, the riders finish, and just because of the location of it, there's no one around, like there's no one cheering them on, etc. So it always looks like it's just in the middle of nowhere, it's not that big, whereas in fact the prize purse is huge.
I think that's what differs in Alpine. With the race courses, they tend to end in a town. They kind of tend to end in the village. Slow style courses, because the amount of snow that's required to build them and where kind of the terrain they need, they're always much higher up the mountain. You don't get all the foot traffic up there, which is why I think, like you said, the city events work so well. You don't even need to go out to ski or snowboard to get to it. Same as the World Cup Alpine. You just walk up, stand there and watch.
Traditionally, that is what has brought the crowds in to the Alpine World Cup events. If you look at Vogan, that is massive. Kitzbühel is insane. Adelboden GS finishing right in the town. Schladming night slalom on the men's tour, and then Flachau night slalom on the women's tour is just unbelievable. I mean, they're getting huge crowds. It is the national sport in Austria, but you're right to point out, and this links to ski cross, snowboard cross as well, that you just need so much snow. So if we said we don't want a World Cup in Stubai because the crowds won't come in, we wouldn't be holding them till January, and it's too late. So we got to take it, and I'm contradicting myself a little bit, but we've got to take that. If we want to run the events, we've got to do them where the snow is, because you've got to move so much.
You've got to sacrifice the crowd to run the event, and I think especially in an Olympic year, that's the event is more important than the crowd and the publicity that it gets, because they just need those qualifying points.
Especially now the courses are getting so much more different and varied, and they're almost competing between themselves as to who can put on the weirdest slopestyle course possible.
Which is nice to see. I think it's interesting. I think we've gone away from this 3 rails into 3 jumps format, and we've gone to a big variety, which is what slopestyle and freestyle was meant to be kind of from the start anyway.
Yeah, and now we get all the quarter pipes built in on the side of the kickers to really change it up a little bit.
Thank you so much. I think to finish off, can we get a go around and get everyone tell them kind of what you're up to this winter, what your plans? It's all very different all the way from parts of the world. So, what's your winter looking like?
At the moment, there's a lot of judging focus. I will be heading around with the British University Tour, just head judging all the spots there. So Mavin will be along for the ride for that. Little bits of coaching here and there with some of our younger park and pipe athletes, and just kind of building towards that Olympics. And then, as part of my Snowsport England job, I'll be doing a lot of social media coverage around the Winter Olympic time. Lots of late nights because it's all that side of the clock. I'll be sat on Twitter following the progress, and I'm pretty excited about it. Can't wait for it to actually kick off and get rolling. So it's time now.
Super exciting. Because you're out in.
Yeah, I'm back off out to North America in a couple of weeks' time. We're going to be doing the provincial tour, a few Fizz comps and junior nationals. Busy season for us, kicks off early this year in November, so yeah, looking forward to it.
Later in the season, back?
I won't be back till May, unfortunately.
April for the Brits.
I'm going to try and get back for the Brits.
Yeah, I was supposed to be broadcast in Copenhagen. Maybe that's where maybe there's a bit of bitterness in there for selfish reasons. But starting up Beijing, covering Beijing World Cup, and then the Copper Mountain half pipe, which is obviously one of the best half pipes in the world, and then Ski Cross Tour kicks off. So a lot of broadcasting right through, covering the Olympics for Eurosport as well. So it's a busy season ahead. Really looking forward to getting started with it.
Guys, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.